Welcome to Zero Gravity's podcast. Today I have my good friend Andreas. He is the CEO and founder of Heff. Real quick, before we get too deep into Heff, could you give us a brief introduction into yourself and how you got to founding Heff?
Yeah, of course, happy to. And thanks for having me, Jax. So I'm the CEO and founder of Heph AI. And as is usual for a startup, I am responsible for many different things, but mainly it's strategy, hiring, PR, and investor relations. So I've been at the intersection of AI and crypto since 2021 when I joined Human Protocol, which provides infrastructure and integrations to build global technologies. I've learned a lot about the plethora of different use cases for AI, and I'm super excited for its future. And what inspired the creation of Heff AI is actually that we saw a lot of problems in terms of how the AI space is being developed and that there's tools missing. So this is exactly what we are trying to solve.
So you mentioned that there are tools missing. What kind of tools do you feel like are missing from the space or just not fully built out yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally this started as a spin-out idea before it became its fully own thing. And what we saw is the need for better labeling tools on the one hand, and alongside it, the number one thing that we were always getting feedback on was there needs to be better quality, better transparency, better scaling, and a higher cost efficiency, which is a lot of different things. But basically, we feel that there is a need for a new approach because the current issues with AI aren't being solved in a way where we think it is enough. So we plan to solve that using reputation systems, upskilling, and data provenance.
Absolutely. And so let's talk a little bit, because I think this will be helpful for the audience. Let's talk a little bit about how AI is created today, and then where, Heff kind of slots into the process, the lifecycle of AI creation.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to train a model, depending on what kind of situation you have and which kind of data you have and which kind of model you want, it can be very, very difficult. For example, if it's a high complexity task, for example, in healthcare, chances are there is no foundation, there's no base that you can build upon. In this case, you need to start from scratch. And that means you need to train a machine to understand what it's looking at and what it should then predict or create, generate, tag, whatever it is that you want it to do. And that means humans need to tell the machine what is what. So let's stick with healthcare. You would say, okay, I will now draw a box, for example, around a heart. And I do that many, many times. And that is one of the big limitations. You need an abundance of data. And once you have done that a couple of hundreds of thousands of times, maybe, then the machine starts to understand, okay, I know what a heart is. And then you start working on, okay, how does a heart look that is healthy? How does one look that is not healthy? And we focus on that part, the human interactive part, because as we all know, Web3 is about community, about participation, and we are building a community that can work on this, that can acquire the necessary skills to do even a more advanced tasks. So up to 40% of all work in creating a model is related to data and human data work. And that is exactly where we slot in.
So let's continue with this health example. So let's say there's not a very good defined data set on what a tumor looks like or what some kind of malady looks like. Then you guys would help with the data labeling, get people to identify like this is a tumor, this is not a tumor, this is a fracture, this is not a fracture, and then hundreds and hundreds, and I assume even thousands of those to help the machines start to identify like tumor, not tumor. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys facilitate, getting all of this data labeling and how you make this a better process from what currently exists.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our own interface through which A, companies can launch a task or a job, and B, we have an interface for workers to actually do the annotating and labeling of data. This is infinitely flexible. It supports image, video, audio, text. So in a medicinal environment, this could be both text about patients, but also images or videos. So if we stick with this, basically, we need to have a lot of data provided. But some of the data usually is corrupted, like let's say in a corrupted image that is incredibly blurry and that you can't work on. And that is then called data cleaning, that you prepare the data to have the correct one. Sometimes you need more, then you augment the data. And then it comes to the specific data labeling, saying what is actually seen on this. There's different methods for it. You can tag it, label it, draw boxes around it, outlines, etc., for a machine to better understand it. Because that is a difficult task, and health is probably not the easiest one and not the easiest example, we have a upskilling and education platform where workers can hone their skills or expand their horizons so that they are ready to take on more difficult tasks. The easiest one you've probably seen, where you might not even know that you train a model, is captchas, where it's like, is this a car? Mark the motorcycle and all the things that we love to do. This is the simplest form that basically anyone can do, but sometimes you need more domain expertise. And that is where our unique upskilling and education system comes in. And we gamify it a little bit so that it doesn't get dry.
And then, so we've gone through kind of like the cleaning, the enrichment of the data labeling. Then I know you guys help with other parts of the life cycle. So talk to me a little bit about like what other features Heff brings and how it kind of enhances an AI developer's life.
Yeah, of course. So the first part is our tool, but we are an end-to-end AI partner. That means we can come in at any stage. That can be, if you know what you're doing, let's say, for example, you already know you want to train an LLM. We can help you with the pure data labeling part. But there is a lot of companies that realize LLMs cannot do everything for them because they are very broad, and sometimes you need something that can do one thing perfectly. And then you need a customized model. That means you need to understand which base model you want to use, how to integrate the data workflows from your own end to enhance it and fine-tune it until it's perfect. And we cover the full step of the way. So it doesn't matter how much you know internally, we got you covered. So we can do some consulting, choosing the right model, feeding it with the data for the base models, adding on your own data, integrate it into your workflow and deploy it so that you now have an automated tool. But usually what happens afterwards is a model is never truly done because usually there's new data coming in. So there's a constant ongoing maintenance and update loop there.
So if we stick with maybe the medical example, so we had one client come in and they really didn't have anything and we needed to help them with data labeling. They needed the full gamma of service. Maybe somebody else comes in and they're like, hey, we've got this tool that's pretty good at identifying fractures on scans. Talk to us a little bit about like the different kind of like clients you guys would help and at like what different life cycle they would be at.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have seen a lot of interest from the advertising industries, marketing, social media, research, and business process outsourcing is a very huge field that most people actually don't know about, where you can break down basically any process. This can be something like invoicing. There's still a lot of handwritten invoices that a computer cannot really easily track. So you need to train it constantly so that it can then auto-convert it from handwriting and feed it directly into a system from a company, for example. It's also in compliance, in tourism, for example, with Gen AI. If you have terabytes and terabytes of old video data, you can actually train an AI model to generate new videos for you based on your own data that you have owned. So that is a couple of the examples of things we're working on.
Yeah, if there are any freelancers or business people out there, you might go into something like QuickBooks and it's starting to categorize some of your credit card transactions into business expense. This was travel, this was this was that. Is that essentially what you guys are doing? Like if these companies have really large data sets that are relatively proprietary, you're helping them create models and like auto categorizations, things of that nature.
Yes, that would be one of the examples. There is a lot of companies who have an abundance of data that they actually cannot process because it's too much, it's too unstructured, or it's not clear in terms of how AI actually can be utilized to help with that. And that's where we come in and propose a model and an outcome, right? So we discuss with the client what is their perfect outcome. And then we say, okay, great. There's usually, in cases like this, where it's a regular use case, I would say, there's a foundation model. So that means don't nail me down on this number, but let's say 60% is already done, and you only then need to train it to another, 39%, so that it's 99% accurate. That can save you a big chunk. And then basically what you do is you take the foundation model, take the data from the company, and then perfect it to have it then work on its own. Still, we do advise a human in the loop that constantly spot checks and reviews it to catch any errors and to update and further improve the last percentages.
So let's say somebody brings a model to you guys that is, let's say, like on the 80% done range. Like, how are you guys using, like, are they coming to you for that like human enrichment with like additional data labeling? Talk to us a little bit about like how that would work if we like pretty much our model's good, but like we always want to make it better, right?
We actually had that before, yeah, where someone said, okay, this is good, but it's not perfect. And we actually are a little bit stuck because purely with machine learning, we can't progress. And that is usually because we've seen this with Google's AI model, right? They trained it mainly on machine generated data, and that kind of cannibalizes itself a little bit on its own. If it was 90% done well, and you take 90% of 90%, you're now down to 81% accuracy. So purely relying on that, you actually get a degrading model, which has been proven by studies as well. That means you need fresh insight and a fresh perspective. And that is where humans come in again. So a lot of the times it's the beginning and the end where the humans come in to say, okay, let's see the checkpoints where the model has performed well and then where it has gone off. And then we can slowly get it back up again by getting new input, new data, new labels, etc.
Yeah, I had to say when I was working at Google and us kind of falling behind in, I say us as if I was still there, when they were falling behind in the AI race, it was actually kind of sad because we've been just told for years and years and years, like, oh, Google's the best at AI. And then a new entrant comes in and just completely mops the floor with us. But that happens when you're not staying up with the times. Talk to us a little bit, because we obviously focus here on decentralized AI. We love AI, but like Onchain AI. Talk to us about how you guys are seeing the evolving blockchain environment and how you might be integrating it with your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I like about decentralized AI is that this should be this was the idea, for example, behind OpenAI, right? It was literally open in the name. But now that we have seen that this is more going for profit, which is in the works, there's a definite highlighted need for decentralized AI, because a technology as potentially powerful as this should not be behind closed doors and only profit a few people, right? So this is why I believe that decentralization, both for the generation of data sets, training of models, but also, for example, for the compute or the storage, can be something that a lot of more people would profit from than if you look at just the closed models that are being built at the big corporations. So yeah, I'm very excited for the future of decentralized AI, and we are very happy to, contribute a little bit to that.
Yeah, and how do you think decentralized AI will manifest? I've seen my friends at Ask Venice, which kind of has like a decentralized version of what we would call like a chat GPT or like the classic chat prompt model. How do you see it evolving?
Yeah, there are some things where we have some issues with. For example, we have seen this when there was completely open source, no control, no quality mechanisms, no oversight. You saw something that's called a poison data attack. And that means that people deliberately feed a model wrong answers on purpose to train it wrong, like train it wrong as a joke. This has happened, for example, with Croc AI from X as well, where then suddenly it gave answers that were not within scope. And for that reason, we believe that there is some mechanisms to protect against this. And we have a couple of solutions for this. A is a reputation-based system, so that we understand if an answer has too much deviation or variance from the consensus answer, then we flag it and highlight it for someone to say, are you sure? Are you happy with that answer? And for even more complex things, we are building a proof of balance system where if you are clearly trolling or feeding wrong answers, we can slash the balance to offset the damage it's caused. This is only in very deliberate and harmful cases, but there's a couple of mechanisms how you can ensure that everybody works towards the same goal and doesn't, try to crash it or destroy the model from within.
And then would it work essentially like a decentralized solver network where essentially each of the underlying nodes that may be running the model, like they give back, answers, and then you're like, that node's reputation is a little iffy. Talk to us a little bit of how it functions from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So we take into account a couple of different metrics. One is obviously accuracy or quality. Other one is task completion rate. Sometimes people pick up tasks, never complete them. That is unreliable. Then there's also speed. But honestly, the highest one is quality and also consistency. because sometimes you don't want someone who is sometimes 100% correct and then zero. You'd rather have someone, well, that is always in the high 90s, right? So we track that at every single data point and at every single annotator level. And of course, there's ways, like everybody has a bad day, right? So let's say you have a bad day, you wake up with a fever, but you think, no, I can do this. And suddenly all your answers were wrong. This is why we have this education and upskilling platform. So then you can train your way back up, and through performing tests, you can get back into the mix, basically. So there's always an opportunity to get back up there. It's also depending on complexity. We have different tiers of level of jobs. So through these tests, credentials, etc., that you can provide, for example, our own credentials, but also I have a master's degree in this, or I have a B2 certificate in German or English, so that I can now work on certain tasks like translation. That makes sure that we find the right person for the right job, or the right node for the right job. We definitely support work pools, for example, where we can say people can band together and provide that as a collective, for sure.
And then talk to us about some of the biggest like technical challenge and strategic challenges you guys have had in building and scaling Heff.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we are doing is we're trying to change the whole way how annotation is being done, because quality is such a big concern, right? Especially the better machines get, the more you need the last steps of quality process to be better. So what we're proposing has many different layers. We have our own tool. We have the data provenance system that stores, tracks any kind of data about who has worked on the data, what data has been used, what were the checkpoints, where did things go wrong, etc. So that is an immutable track record system that's on-chain. And we're utilizing Zero-G's tech stack for that data storage, for example. Then we have our upskilling system. We have the reputation system. So there's a lot of moving parts, and to be sure that they play well into each other and that they function like a well-oiled machine, because a lot of this is based on automation, requires a lot of due diligence on our part in terms of choosing the right software, the right infrastructure, and also taking into account fairness, transparency, and elimination of bias. So it's a lot of strategic work in the beginning and then technical work to scale it up properly.
Absolutely. You mentioned obviously, CRG. Talk to us about some of the notable partnerships and collaborations that you guys have formed in order to, contribute to the project's growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually the Zero-G and One Piece Labs accelerator that we are in has been incredibly helpful. Not only because the storage solution and the data availability layer are pretty cool, and we are looking forward to utilizing them to their fullest, but also because of everybody involved being so helpful. We have learned a lot about the industry. We have gotten a ton of introductions in terms of to other blockchains, to other projects, and we're even working on the first use case together with a couple of the partners we have met to deliver the first completely decentralized model. That means decentralized data, decentralized labeling, decentralized storage, of course, in Zero-G, to have a completely decentralized model from A to Z. And One Piece Labs has been very helpful in helping out with introductions to investors, other partners, and also working on stuff like tokenomics.
Well, obviously, we're big fans here on the podcast as well. Talk to us a little bit about some of the, you talked about having to build reputation systems, talking about like making sure the data set never gets poisoned. Talk about some of the like ethical challenges, such as like fairness, reducing bias, and the models. How you guys have kind of approached that challenge.
Yeah. So actually, using a decentralized workforce is one of the best things that you can do for bias reduction, because you don't want to have the same 10 people always label your data. You want a diverse as possible network. This is what we are providing, right? We have different work pools and we have access to potentially hundreds of thousands of people that want to do the work. So we need to understand what their skills are, but also where they are from, so that we can put in the parameters to make sure that there is an equal distribution. And that is the bias part. And then in terms of fairness, we are very, very transparent with everything we do. This is the pricing, this is the level of tiers, this is the amount of work required or skill required to do different tasks, so that there's equal opportunity for everyone. And then there's data provenance records that help with the transparency and traceability of the models as well, so that you understand why has a model done this. A lot of times there's still a black box. For example, if you ask ChatGPT something, how did it come to this? Who knows? I'm not sure if even OpenAI knows. But if we look at the EU, where I'm located, there is a regulation, the EU AI Act, coming up that actually requires both specificity and traceability so that you understand how model has performed and why it has done that. And that is something that we believe is very open and very transparent. And I actually love to see that more.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting development. Talk to us a little bit about some of the upcoming milestones or developments, features that the community can look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just finished building our MVP, and as I teased already, we're working on the first model use cases. We're currently in the design phase to understand what kind of model is best suited, what kind of foundation is there. But as soon as we have that ironed out, there's actually the first paid tasks coming up. So for anybody who's curious to see how our tool works and learn more about Heff, we would advise following us on our newly created Twitter and Telegram channels, and we'll tease about when it's going to start. And then there's actual data labeling to be done, and you can toy around with our tools and our interface. And we're looking forward to presenting our upskilling and education system as well, so that you can already see a little bit and learn more about AI. Because as much as we talk about it, a lot of people have interacted with the finished model, but not with the model creation process. And I personally was super curious about that. And if other people are as well, perfect time to try it out.
Absolutely. So, talk to us a little bit about where we should direct, like who should be, engaging with you guys. Is it researchers, developers, enterprises? Is it people that are like, hey, I would love to label some data on my free time? Talk to them a little bit about like who should be, using your guys' platform.
Everyone. No, I'm kidding. But actually, nearly all the people or projects you mentioned, I mean, you know what you're doing. This is obviously right. But yes, so we have a support for any kind of business that wants to use machines to automate a certain part of their data workflow and data processes, right? And a lot of the times people think, I have data, but what can I do with it? Well, we know what we could do with it or what you could do with it. So if you are thinking about it, reach out to us. If you have a model already in development and you want to save costs, we are extremely confident that we can be both cheaper, faster, and more accurate utilizing our own solutions. If you're a data scientist and want to contribute to building models, we have clients that want more advanced things that someone that is at an entry level cannot work on. And if you say, hey, I want to earn a few bucks, then, well, our upcoming tasks might be just suited for you.
Now, are there any verticals where they maybe have not adopted AI as much? Like if I used to work at BlackRock, so like I know BlackRock's been working on AI for a very long time, but maybe like the insurance industry, are there any verticals where you feel like they haven't been as quick to adopt, but they have like a very rich data set that could be very useful?
Yes, we have seen two very interesting use cases, and one is in advertising and one was actually in dating. And that was quite funny. So the dating one, I'm a little bit ambivalent on because, well, on the one hand, I feel like matching is broken to a lot of people that use these tools that can be then matched with robots or just within, I don't know, 5 minutes, you realize, oh no, this was not a good match. So understanding more on a perfect match is great, but then you can kind of game it. And there's ways where you can utilize AI as a relationship or dating coach. And that is, I don't know if we want to go down that route, but it's definitely something that we are very interested to see develop because I'm very curious about that. And in advertising, there's a lot of data that's going around and there are so many metrics that one can track. And to have better correlation, causation, and understanding buying intent, for example. I feel like predictions have become slowly more of interest, like with BlackRock is working on probably, but it's not just that. It's also for user behavior. And I do believe we will see more on that in terms of understanding which user to retarget, for example.
Yeah, predictions are quite interesting. I don't know if you saw. So obviously we have Polymarket, right? But Robinhood as well in the US added then the election predictions. It's interesting you mentioned the data use case. I'll be curious to see what comes of that. I know there was an app called Riz, which essentially gave people responses, and that was doing about $1 million a month, if I'm not mistaken. So, hey, there's money in many different areas. So people reach out.
Exactly. And that is the fun part, right? Because sometimes it's difficult to describe because it's so wide. Basically, anything that has enough data can be utilized to train a model on. And that makes it kind of hard to narrow it down. And that also can make it somewhat overwhelming because you say, but I have so much data. What do I do with it? And that is why we have decided we're not a consulting company, but we help consult on the initial stages because we can understand that it's somewhat overwhelming to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, where can people, get in touch with you? You mentioned there's a new Twitter. Is there any there's a Telegram? Did you say there's a Discord? Talk to them a little bit. Shout out the links that people can go interact with those, and then also your own social media so people can stay in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is Heff.ai. That is very simple. Then our Twitter is @HeffTech, and our Telegram group is Heff AI Tech. And yeah, you'll be seeing more from us in the very near future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and let's continue building the future of AI and Web3.